Data engineering is probably one of the most important yet underrated data career fields. And because it's not as popular as your data science or data analyst roles, there tend to be not so much resources available out there in terms of how do you actually become a data engineer. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down step by step the things that you need to do in order for you to become a data engineer. I have literally designed a roadmap for you guys, and I'll be sharing it on the chat. I'll create a link and share it on the chat where you can actually download it so that you can refer to it in future. So in this video, we'll go into the detail of the steps that you need to take or the key skills that you need to have as a data engineer. How's it, data fam? My name is Clarence, and I simplify data and AI concepts and share career tips. And on top of that, I actually provide data and AI education through my academy. So if you're new, please make sure that you like and subscribe so that more people can actually see this video. The first step that you need to do as you become a data engineer, it has to be your data fundamentals. It's very important that you start with the data fundamentals because that's really the key concepts that allow you to be in rooms with other data engineers. If you think about it, as data engineers, we actually work with different systems, and we need to ensure that data actually flows into those different systems and everyone actually gets access to data. Because if we don't do our jobs, nothing else works in the data space, right? So some of the key, let's say, fundamental concepts that you need to know as a data engineer, like things like your data pipelines, understanding how data actually flows, and also designing the data pipelines, right? Data architecture, right? You need to actually design and have a view of how the entire company, how the data actually flows in an enterprise. So that's something that's very, very important for you to understand. Thirdly, it's actually ETL and ELT rules. Now, this is about the transformation of data and all of that. So it's very important for you to understand how data is transformed, because these are very, very important concepts, as business often requires the transformation of data, and it's not always in the best possible form, right? The next thing is batch and streaming processing, right? The way that data moves can either move from using batch methods or streaming methods, right? Very important to understand the business needs and also what might be best for the particular business that you actually work for. So from the first thing that I would say is very important is to get your data fundamentals solid, right? Before you even do anything, you need to understand some of these key concepts within the data engineering space. Step number 2 in your data engineering journey, you need to learn SQL. Guys, a lot of the data in the world is sitting in databases, right? For you to get access to that data, you actually need to be able to query those databases, right? A lot of companies still use structured data and all of that. They store structured data in these relational databases, right? So you having SQL skills really gives you an advantage because you are able to work with databases, extract data, and that's the most important thing, really. So SQL is your go-to. It's literally the first programming language that you actually would need to learn. And some of the key things you need to learn include understanding how joins actually work, inner join, left join, right join, and all of that. Aggregation, right? Understand how to do aggregation using SQL, window functions, and also query optimization, right? Because you work with large amounts of scripts, so you need to use CTEs and all of that. So those are some of the skills that I believe that are very important if you're going to be learning SQL as a data engineer. It's the first programming language that is very, very important. Now, step number 3, you need to learn Python, right? Python is very, very important for data engineers, right? There's a couple of things that you need to know when you're working with Python. So things like being able to pull data from APIs, transform data sets. Well, Python actually offers much more advanced capabilities and features for transforming data. So that's where it actually really stands out. The next thing is automate workflows using Python, right? It's very important to know how to actually automate workflows using Python and also build ETL pipelines using Python, right? But essentially having your Python fundamentals and understanding how Python is actually used in the sort of data engineering space, and also being able to write Python code is going to be very, very important. So that once you're comfortable with SQL, you sort of want to move to Python as the next programming language to basically learn. Step number 4, now that you've learned SQL, you've got very solid data fundamentals, and you've learned Python, it's time for you to move to data processing, right? So distributed data processing is something that is very, very important. If you think about it, often data engineers work in companies that process large amounts of data, and the traditional ways of actually processing data might not actually work. So you need to really think about what is the best way to actually process data. And in most cases, it has something to do with distributed data processing. This is where you start learning about Apache Spark, right? So Apache Spark is a great sort of framework for how to process data across distributed clusters and all of that. So getting yourself familiarized with like how exactly Apache Spark actually works, and also learning about PySpark and Scala and all the different sort of like Spark programming languages is really, really going to be important, right? Some of the key things to learn, it's like your Spark fundamentals, get your Spark fundamentals, understand what Spark is all about and what distributed data processing is all about, understand data frames, distributed computing. Those are very key concepts. Then lastly, as I've already mentioned, learn about PySpark, which is basically Python, but in the context of Apache Spark, which is really good for processing large amounts of data. So that's the next step you want to go into once you've solidified yourself in Python, SQL, and the data fundamentals. Step number 5, once you are comfortable with Apache Spark and the PySpark, the next thing that you actually need to do is to learn about the modern data platforms. Learning about modern data platforms is very important, right? If you think about it, most companies use modern data platforms, whether they're using Microsoft Fabrics, Databricks, and all of that, right? A lot of companies are moving to these modernized systems because it's easier to process data, and these platforms actually unify the data in one place. So as a data engineer, you need to have the skill sets to actually be able to utilize those platforms and help companies actually manage their data properly. So some of the tools that I would say you need to learn about in the modern data platforms that you need to work on, Databricks. I would highly recommend that you start with Databricks because I feel like it is much more entry level friendly, and I think it's not a complex platform to actually work with. It's a really amazing platform. Then secondly, you can look at Snowflake. That's another very important modern data platform, very similar to Databricks. They offer similar services and all of that. And then you've got Microsoft Fabric. So Microsoft Fabric is also very similar to the two that I've already mentioned. So you want to get yourself familiarized with Microsoft Fabrics. And the next, you're going to look at Google BigQuery. So BigQuery is actually very good. It's one of the best platforms for actually processing data, right? They have been an industry leader for a long time, and they're still very good at data processing. So BigQuery is another platform that you might actually find yourself having to learn. Then there's other platforms like Apache Airflow and Kafka, which are really good for data streaming and also ensuring that everything works and you're scheduling your flow of data and literally everything and all of that. So these platforms are really amazing, but it would also depend on what your company is actually using. So you'd find yourself either using Databricks, Snowflake, or Microsoft Fabrics and all of that. But those are some of the key essential tools that you need to learn as a data engineer, because this is the modern platforms that most companies actually use. Now, step number 5. In step number 5, this is where you want to learn about cloud computing, right? If you think about it, most of the data that companies actually have is stored in the cloud, right? So most companies are migrating to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and all of that. So that basically means that as a data engineer, you need to have the skill sets to understand what cloud computing actually means and also be able to work on the cloud environment. So cloud computing is another very essential skill for a data engineer. So you want to do that towards the end. Once you're much more comfortable and you've got much more experience and all of that, that is really the part where you start getting certified in Google, AWS, or Azure, and all of those different platforms. And honestly, those are the steps that you need to take in order for you to become a really, really good data engineer. So in summary, the data engineer roadmap basically starts with, firstly, understanding data fundamentals, SQL, Python, distributed data processing. This is where you learn about Apache Spark. And then you go into modern data platforms, so you learn about the modern data platforms that companies are actually using. And then lastly, you end with cloud platforms, right? This is where you start getting certified in all of these amazing AWS, Azure, and Google certification platforms. So if you guys like this video, please make sure that you like and subscribe so that more people can actually see more content like this. Thank you.